So, talking about big, our next speaker represents one of South Africa's most remarkable automotive growth stories. As Deputy CEO of WeBuyCars and previously its Group Chief Digital Officer, he has been instrumental in building the data-driven engine behind the company's rapid expansion. Since 2018, he has led its digital transformation journey, embedding analytics, technology, and operational intelligence at the core of the business. Ladies and gentlemen, his surname's amazing. It's Beerkus, and his first name is Wynand. I think I got that right. And I said he's massive because he's way taller than me. Make some noise for Mr. Beerkus.
Thank you, man. No, I think I'm fine. I just need the clicker. While we're waiting for the clicker, I also got a doctor story. But it wasn't a heart attack. The guy had a rash. That was a bit awkward. Clicker. Or will you just go as I go along? Okay, thank you. Good morning, everybody. It's an honor to be here. Tough act to follow, Dean. So I'm going to just step back one slide, please. I'm just going to do a quick introduction and why we are here today. WeBuyCars, as you know, it's a 20-year-old business, 25-year-old business started in 2001. And a lot of the things that were said today about AI and influencer marketing, and we've been doing for a while now. Oh, thank you very much. We've been doing for a while. And the real inflection point for WeBuyCars was in 2018, and I'll get to that now. But it was an inflection point of data, and the theme I want to talk to you about today is just stepping back a bit and all those great things about generative AI and how we use it, but how do we practically employ that into the business? If you talk about ROI and all of the executives sitting here today, it's about the money you spend, the returns you're getting. But how do you practically do that? And that's a challenge. That is questions in boardrooms across the country, and not just in the automotive sector, but in all the sectors. So we want to step back and say, but how was our journey? And I just want to tell you our story. So it doesn't mean it's right, it doesn't mean it's wrong, it is just our story. Authentic story. Two brothers started in 2001, as you know. You all know that story. And in 2017, there was private equity investment in WeBuyCars, the first investment. It organically grew over the last 17 years. And there are two prerequisites for the investment. And the one was they needed to get WeBuyCars needed to get a CFO to get control of the finances. And the second thing was they needed some IT guy. And they knew this world or this word of digital transformation was out there, but they didn't really know what it means and how what will that mean for the business. So I was lucky enough to get this opportunity in 2018. Started at WeBuyCars, and it was a difficult decision to move there, to be honest. I came from a technology background, and here we walked into a business that was a car dealership that bought and sold just north of 2,000 vehicles a month at that stage. So it was already a big business, but they had nothing. They had no systems. The business was ran off a Google Sheet, like many great businesses, and WhatsApp. That starts, and I'm sure there's a lot of dealers that still runs on WhatsApp or Excel and Google Sheets. And we had this, and I always tell this story, and I said we had this blank canvas, and we could color in this technology story for WeBuyCars. And in 2018, with this private equity investment, there comes pressure, because suddenly you now have a shareholder that you have to answer to, and they obviously didn't invested money to let it grow. So we've always seen ourselves as a growing business, and now the pressure was on. I'm going to skip quickly to where we are today. and we are an AI-powered digital business platform. And I'm going to talk about that a bit more and how did we practically to do that. So in 2018, just stepping back to 2018, we had a very difficult decision to make. It was one of our first very difficult decisions, and that was to build or to buy. Simple question with ramifications of that answer, which is that can be quite wide. So we grappled with the idea of, listen, are we going to build this software ourselves, or are we going to buy a traditional ERP system? And one of the things that we discussed was, listen, but here we had a 17-year-old business, doing 2,000 vehicles per month, working very well, owner-operated business, was already working, knew the industry, knew the service, understood the market from their perspective. And why do we want to buy or build or buy software that we have to adapt the business to the software? And I'm talking about the traditional ERP systems. So we made a tough decision in 2018 that we're going to build our own software. So we want to build our own software stack, which was a tough decision with tough conversations, but the right one. And we based that decision on two principles. The first principle was we didn't want to adopt the business to software. We wanted the software to work for the business, firstly. The second thing, we want to be in control of the data. Okay, so we want to be in control of the data cleanliness, the data quality, and the data pipeline going into the business. Because we knew if we can get to a stage where we are in control of our data, that will stand us in good stead in years to come. So that was the decision was made. Tough decision, had no IT team, no developers on our payroll, and we had to start from scratch. So we started looking, started employing, started building. One of the first people we employed was a data person, because we also knew that if you build your systems, your data person needs to be part of this journey from the start. Otherwise, your data quality and your data pipelines is at risk. A lot of businesses here, and I'm sure today, and I've seen a lot of business in the technology world, with different dispersed systems across the business, more than one billing system, more than one ERP system, more than one inventory management system, and it just gets difficult, it gets complicated. You have to build this orchestration layer on top of that to get all your data into one place. And that just makes it complex and expensive to run. Okay, so you obviously, from a cost perspective, you want to keep your cost base as low as possible. So, stepping back into today, what do we have today? We call it the experimental digital business platform. And this platform was built from a culture of experimentation. So if I say that, what do I mean? I mean that we, right or wrong, you can decide, but we test everything that we do. So anything, if we change anything on the website, it runs through an A/B test model. And we just split the traffic between different percentages. If we test the internal process or make internal process live, we test it through a A/B testing model. So we test everything. We're trying to keep the emotion out of it when we make decisions that impacts our customers. So there are two types of decisions in the business, and it's actually quite simple. It's type 1 and type 2. And the type 1 is your difficult, hard decisions. That's at almost irreversible decisions. For us, it's opening a branch. If you're going to spend 300 million rand to open a branch, you need to be quite sure and think deep on the location, where you're going to put it, is it going to get a good ROI, all those things we talk about. That's a difficult decision that takes a long time. Probably not in WeBuyCars because we make decisions quite quickly, but that is a type 1 decision. A type 2 decision for us is buying and selling a vehicle. Okay, so all as you know, we don't do new vehicles, we only do second-hand vehicles. But for us, it's buying and selling a vehicle is a type 2 decision. It's a quick decision. And that is a type of decision that you can make quickly. And that's a perfect type of decision that you can run experiments on. And you can test it. Okay, so you can test elasticity on different price brackets, different makes, different models, different provinces, whatever you want to. Okay, so that's why we do experimentation. And that keeps on enhancing the platform, because that outcomes of that experimentation goes back into our data models. Same with the website, like I said, we test everything. And my background actually comes from there, where we do testing on websites and make sure that your frictionless customer journey. We all heard customer journeys starts online, or 90%, or what was that percentage? And we all know that is true. Your customer journey with influencers, getting your top of funnel branding out there, your brand affinity, leading you to your website, doing your research on your vehicles, and only then getting into your dealership at the end of that journey. So I totally agree with that comment that was made. So let's move to the WeBuyCars, what we call AI stack. Generative AI that Dean spoke about just now, AI is this broad topic that not many people understands very well. It is not just ChatGPT, and it's not just Claude or Open or NotebookLM or all these platforms that is AI. There's actually 7 disciplines in the AI complement, and it's a journey to get there. It is not overnight. Generative AI, you can definitely start using today, and you should, because that future is here. You're going to fall behind if you don't use that. But we actually started our journey in 2018, when we made that decision to build our own software, and made a data person part of this journey. We had this dream in 2018 where we said, yes, imagine you can buy and sell a vehicle without humans involved in the process. That was a statement or hypothesis we made in 2018. And I'm going to get to that now. So that leads us to where we are in our business today. And a lot of companies and sitting here, and a lot of industries and big businesses got a lot of data. And we brag about data. And the question is, how do you use your data to actually make a difference in the business? The most difficult thing with using your data in the business is actually operationalizing your data. To take that bold step to automate the process. To take that bold step to make a decision on your behalf. It's not easy. And then on top of that, you get the change management of the people. That's very difficult. That's probably, if I'm honest with our journey from 2018, the thing I probably underestimated the most was the change management from a people perspective. Because everybody is scared about AI. And rightfully so. But does it mean we're going to not employ people? No. Our goal has never been to replace people. Your role might change. You might become more effective. And that's how we see this use of AI and data in our business as well. But automation plays a huge role in where we are going as well. But like I said, it is a journey. One of the big things is collecting the data and make sure, like I said, your data quality is of such a standard that you can use it. We're going to get to generative AI just now, and building these models, predicting and iterating. Keep on iterating and keep on improving your models. So what have we done with WeBuyCars? Obviously, one of the most important things that we do as a company, because we buy from the consumer and we sell to the consumer, is to price vehicles. So one of those disciplines that I spoke about in the AI world is machine learning, which still plays a huge role in this AI world, or bigger AI discipline. So we need to build pricing models to make sure that we also take the emotion out of pricing decisions when we purchase vehicles. Okay? So recently, for all the statistical people here, we moved to Bayesian statistical models. Now, what Bayesian statistical models make it a bit different than your normal traditional statistical models. We are used to in this industry what we call depreciation curves. And if I talk about the depreciation curves of your vehicle, everybody knows exactly what I'm talking about now. So we're not going to delve into that. But the difference between a Bayesian statistical model, it starts a bit differently. It starts with your prior belief or expert prior belief of what impacts the price of a vehicle. Obviously, my focus here is second-hand vehicles and not new vehicles. And there is different factors that can influence the price of the vehicle. And that might be kilometers, color plays a role, as you all know, your service history, and all that's 80 other factors that goes with that. Now, if you take all this prior beliefs or expert beliefs that influences this price of this vehicle, and you train your model on these prior beliefs and the impact every one of those have on the price of your vehicle, you get to a probability distribution. So that graph that Dean showed, that's a probability distribution. And if you take the middle of that graph, that's 50%. So if you look at that percentiles, from the left-hand side, if you have a distribution, 50% will be on the left-hand side and 50% will be on your right-hand side. So let's take that to pricing. Okay, so why is the statistical models on pricing important for us as a business? We can drive strategy based on our statistical models. It means, or pricing, for each individual vehicle based on its condition, mileage, color, service history, whatever the input may be. Like I said, there's 80 other factors that plays a role. And now suddenly you can start hedging your buying on a distribution or a percentile on a distribution model. Okay, so you can start buying aggressively, so you will pay on the 55 percentile of that model. Or you can sell conservatively. So you will price your selling price on the 45th percentile of your distribution model. So that infers then your business strategy, which puts you in a great position. But it's not possible if you don't have the data pipelines to do this. This models was trained on just over 370,000 trading records from WeBuyCars. Interesting fact, that is, for you, in a bit of technology jargon, there's a big fight for compute in the world, meaning all these big LLM players, they all fight for compute and it's getting expensive. The only place in the world we got enough compute to build these models was in West Germany, and it was built on 4 A100 NVIDIA GPUs, and that was the same hardware that was used to build ChatGPT 3. Okay, so that is the WeBuyCars pricing models. So another discipline in this AI realm is computer vision. So we heard about the products, and there's a lot of products in the market that tries to do this and get it right. Some don't, some doesn't. But what we do in WeBuyCars is, and our philosophy was always been, when we made the decision in 2018, was to, one of our core ethos in our business is own or control every touch point with the customer. So when we talk about things like computer vision, we also build this in-house. But we build things like car parts segmentation to understand the vehicle that we're evaluating and pricing for selling. We need to do damage detection because probably the most important thing that we as a company do is we evaluate the vehicle when we purchase that vehicle. Okay? We don't make money when we sell the vehicle. We make money when we buy the vehicle. Because if you buy right, your supply chain is right, it actually just becomes easier to sell the vehicle. But if you pay the wrong price, you've got a problem. And then you have to deal with those problems on the selling side. Okay? So we need to understand that vehicle very well when we purchase. Because every vehicle's got a price. You just need to make sure that you pay the right price. Okay? Running, non-running, it doesn't matter. Okay? Things like undercarriage, oil leaks. It's difficult to get under the vehicle. So when we send a buyer to your house, and hopefully all of you sold a vehicle to WeBuyCars before, but when we send a buyer to your house to evaluate your vehicle, one of the trouble areas is to get under the vehicle to see if there's oil leaks, if there's sweating of oil. All those things are difficult to do. So we build these computer vision models in WeBuyCars, trained on our own data, because data is part of our ethos. And things like car part segmentation, you get damage detection, you get coverage, you get percentages, and all that gets fed back into the model for pricing again. Things like undercarriage photos. This is an interesting project that we've done, moving into a bit of mechanical engineering as well, but this photo is of undercarriage, as you can see. But what's interesting about this photo, this is actually 3,000 photos of 2-centimeter slices that we take when a vehicle drives up to 40 kilometers over this machine that we built, and it stitches the photos together to get to this undercarriage photo. And you can really, if you look on this on your phone, you can actually zoom in and read the serial number on the exhaust system. That's how high definition this is. But this is actually 3,000 photos that was stitched together. So quite interesting. Now that brings us to generative AI, which is also a discipline in the bigger data science realm. But LLM-powered operations, and that's what Dean actually, part of his whole presentation was built on this. But generative AI, we use it, is that it just augments our teams, meaning, coming back to the statement, how do you make better decisions, more informed decisions, quicker and better? Okay? Things like creating vehicle descriptions. If you go into the WeBuyCars website, you click into any vehicle, you will get an orange bot, we call it orange, hence the corporate colors. And Orange will have a conversation with you. It's a orange bot or LLM bot with all the information based on that vehicle. And it can go to the internet. You can do comparisons between vehicles, between different branches. You can say, listen, what will it cost to drive this vehicle from Pretoria to Sandton? It will calculate it. It will go and get the petrol price. It will get the fuel economy of that vehicle. It will calculate and say it will cost 67 Rand to drive this vehicle from Pretoria to Joburg. And you can do all that calculations. That is the power of generative AI in the world if you have the information. Now, obviously, a lot of that information is on the internet available. And here's the catch. A lot of that information is proprietary to your business. You don't want that information into the internet. So you have to keep that local. And that was spoken about in the previous talk, is what information should be available and help train those models, and what information should you keep in-house and make sure that is part of your proprietary data and that gives your competitive advantage. Okay. A lot of things like customer queries, social media. We heard the importance of answering questions on social media. The problem we have at WeBuyCars is scale. We buying 17,500 vehicles a month, and you get complaints like we all do. You get comments, you get positive notes. And to answer those questions, imagine the size of a call center or a marketing team or a social media management team just to answer any one of those. Now, this is generative AI is a perfect example of how you use AI to help your business and answer those questions automatically, in a voice, in a tone that is set to that customer. That is live. That's not the future. That is here. Everything I'm talking about today is not what we're thinking about or thinking about. It is currently. It's deployed in WeBuyCars. We're using it. And hopefully, a little bit of this nuggets that we talk about today, go and think about it and start thinking of how do you start utilizing this in your business. Because from a cost perspective, we all understand you don't want to grow your cost base linearly with the number of units you buy and sell. Okay. That brings us to agentic AI, which is not generative AI, but it's a different discipline in the AI world. And here we've got a lot of things. And this is now moving towards a bit to your own information and how do you use your own information in the business. Things like DevOps automation in your software section of your business or your IT complement. How do you automate tickets or tasks or the flow of information of what the developers should do. Okay? And things like Claude does that excellently. All the LLM platforms does it excellently. You can train that platform and give it context of your business, your software, and it can help the business analyst just become so much more efficient in creating those tickets. I don't know if anybody knows what's a RAG knowledge base. It's retrieval, augmented generation, augmented generation. It means that you create a RAG in your environment or your business where you can feed private information, like your annual financial statements. So I'm sure there's a lot of CAs in this room, and they are very confident in reading annual financial. I'm not a CA, so for me it's difficult skill to go and try and figure out what is going on in our financial statements. And I had to learn that, and I had to sit down with people and asking questions and explain to me how this works. And it took me a long time to get there. These days, if you build a RAG in your organization, you can take your apps, put it into a RAG database. It's not available to the internet. You can provide access to only people that you want access to, and you can ask any question around your management accounts, your financial statements, to that RAG, and it will answer you directly in the context of your business. So that means that your operational people or your managers or your DPs or whoever can ask financial questions and get answers without involving a financial person like a CA or a FM or your CFO. Now suddenly you empower the people that work for you very differently. You can get trends, you can ask questions, you can compare last year with this year. It is actually amazing. Use it for board meetings, it helps. Things like, another discipline is called MCP. It's called Model Context Protocol, and this is this world of agents. And it's doing autonomous work on people's behalf. So imagine this world where you sit on ChatGPT and you say, again, in the context of WeBuyCars, I want to sell my vehicle. You must have an agent discoverable on the internet that says to me, listen, I'm going to ChatGPT and say, I want to sell my car. And that agent goes out to the internet. It finds an agent that buys cars. He says, listen, I want to buy a car. I want to sell a car. Those two agents start chatting to each other. What car does he drive? He says, I'm driving this car. Mileage, have a little bit of conversation. It's actually logging a lead. If you go to a website and you want to sell a car, we're logging a lead. So this is now a different form of lead logging. Now these two agents chat to each other, you log a lead, but you still need the underlying transactional systems underneath. You still need your APIs, you still need your databases. AI is not going to replace everything, but it's a very sexy tool to put on top of your existing systems. Okay? Now suddenly these two agents chat, you log a lead, you go into your lead management process, and you get a price from an agent, internal agent, that understands the context of our leads, provides a price back to the agent that's discoverable on the internet, and that agent provides the answer to your phone where you're sitting and chatting to GPT. That is where we're going. The principle or the context of a website is probably disappear. We're in this hybrid environment where you're going to have SEO, and we're calling it all these terms, and that's making sure these bots discover you. But in the agent world, you'll have to have an agent that's discoverable and understand the context of your business, because there's no reason in 5 years' time that WeBuyCars will have a website with anything on it than a little block, and you have this conversation with buying and selling in vehicles. That's where we're going. And that brings us to AI-powered development. If you're not using AI or not allowing AI to be used for your software developers in your business, you are going to fall behind very quickly. Of course, the speed and efficiency that you get out of enabling your developers with AI is what we call 10x. And we've been through this journey now. And I can honestly say to you, I'm quite amazed how well it works. There's a thing that they call vibe coding. It's when you start from scratch with a project and you just build a project. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying using vibe coding to start a business. What I'm saying is, if you have an already proprietary software stack, and you can get your developers with testers more efficient. AI is definitely the way to go. And I promise you, if you're not going to do that, you're going to fall behind. So don't be scared of it. Just use it wisely. Okay. So AI maturity in WeBuyCars, seeing running out of time. So we went on this journey for the last 8 years. We started with data science as a foundation of this business. We started with machine learning. We spoke about the pricing models, computer vision as part of these disciplines we use, generative AI, call center. We integrated, we build our own call center software as well. And then agentic AI is now this next phase where we're going to automate a lot of the things in the business. So that brings us to WeBuyCars today. Where are we? Okay. First of all, very important, you have to have somebody with a seat at the table that's got a data-driven culture. Somebody needs to drive that. But the data-driven culture and your decisions need to be backed by evidence. That's that experimentation mindset. Okay. What do we have? Secondly, a proprietary full-stack software and AI platform. And that's from all your software, all your data, from machine learning, pricing models to agentic AI. Continuous experimentation. Please think about experimentation. Think about how you test things. Think about your interaction with your clients on your digital interfaces. Think about testing those and make sure that you make the right decisions and not decisions based on this time who screams the hardest or the loudest. Normally the CEO wins because he screams the loudest. He's not always right. Unit economics over technology. I know my time is up, but I need 1 minute, Alan. Unit economics over technology. Make decisions from a technology perspective that moves your unit economics. Don't just build technology for the sake of technology. I was in a meeting, a risk and ethics meeting a while ago, or a couple of years ago, and the business was struggling quite heavily. And we had this presentation from the CIO of the business, and he said that a great project went live last night. They can now book their leave on their phones. And I just had one question, and I asked her, but listen, what did you do to help the CEO answer the question in the board meeting of your declining sales? Who cares if you can book your leave on a phone if your business is going under? So what I mean by that is, make sure you prioritize your software according to the business. Okay? That moves the unit economics. Vertical integration, we believe very strongly in vertical integration, and that's our structural moat. We set our ethos of business, own or control every integration or every touch point with the customer. Because what we believe in is a frictionless environment where we can do a transaction as quickly as possible. AI human collaboration, very important for the future. It's here. It's now. Don't ignore it. You're going to fall behind. The economics of scale. The great thing about economics of scale is the bigger you get, the better you get, because you get more data. And it's all about the data. It's like the foundation where we started. It's all about the data. And then the long-term play. What we believe in is an integrated system where we make around our core business, every decision we make is that, and every product or component that we build is to make every other component that we own more valuable. And that's sticking. We've got an acronym in our boardroom that says, look after the goose that lays the golden eggs. So what we're trying to do there is not to get caught in different business activities that we forget our core business. And that's it from WeBuyCars. I think my time is up. But yeah, like the theme says today, and the theme that we've discussed is replace theory with fact. We've built this over the last 8 years. We're proud of it. And hopefully we will keep on growing, keep on investing back in South Africa. We love this country. We're not going anywhere. And thank you, everybody.
That was amazing, Vinand. I'm struggling to say the name, guys. Say, well, how do you say it?
Wynand.
Vinand.
Proper Afrikaans.
Proper Afrikaans. Vinand. It's such a nice name, Biokus. I love it. I wish I had that name. It's such a good name. I love it. So you've answered all these questions. And before I ask you to make a final comment, do you know, what do you say for knock knock in Afrikaans?
Klop, klop.
Klop, klop. Yeah, so
Wie's daar?
bonjour.
Bonjour? Bonjour who? Bonjour wie?
So I'll let you do a final comment and then we can say goodbye.
Yeah, if I look at all those questions, I probably answered most of them. Yeah, okay, here's a good one. I'll answer
Oh,
this
okay.
one. So,
must
with
I
moving
say-
towards paperless car purchases, we spoke about robots and how they're going to help people. How does WeBuyCars plan to continue to create employment opportunities on the showroom floor if salespeople becomes redundant? The great thing about a vehicle is that you still want to drive that vehicle. You still want to feel that vehicle. You still want to sit in that vehicle. And the journey that was talked about today, and that authenticity when you're purchasing a vehicle, is still there. Can't be replaced to drive. AI can't drive it for you. So yes, we can use AI around the journey to get you into the showroom or to the warehouse. We can help AI to convince you to sell your vehicle or to purchase a vehicle. We can help AI can help to make your decision what type of vehicle you want to buy. But when you made that decision or your choice, you're still going to go to the dealership. You're still going to drive that vehicle. There's still human interaction there. There's still somebody going to drive with you. It's like I said in the beginning, we are not there to replace any people. But if a salesman in our world, we measure everything, of course. But it's all about ratios. He must be able to sell more vehicles than he did before with all the information on his fingertips. Because we sell all brands across a 20-year-old lifespan of a vehicle, we can't have specialists on every vehicle. We have a Porsche to a Polo that stands next to each other, it's parked next to each other. That salesman doesn't know all the specs about this Porsche, he doesn't know all the specs about this Polo. Maybe about the Polo because we sell many of them, but it's difficult. So you have this information. So suddenly we had the 3-hour, 4-hour interaction of selling this Porsche, that must come down. So you must get more effective. So for us, it's not a personless showroom. It is just a more informed, greater customer experience, frictionless experience with the consumer and a sales executive that's more informed, that can actually have a conversation with the person. But this person already had a conversation with our orange bot, hopefully, before he got there. So yeah, it's not about replacing people, just getting them more effective.
I like that. I agree. Right, so I think that takes us to the end. So thank you so much, Wynand. 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 Oh, I'll get it one day. But it's fantastic meeting you, Mr. Bierkus. How's that? It's better.
Thank you.
Give him a big round of applause.